Hey guys, tonight we step into the cramped, flickering shadows of a medieval city locked in silence. You're standing at the edge of a cobblestone street, torchlight barely piercing the dense fog. The air smells like candle wax, dung, and despair. Behind you, a rickety wooden door, still warm from the bodies just carted out. In front of you, miles of winding alleys, hiding 1,000 different ways to die. You're wearing a beak-shaped mask stuffed with lavender and mint, but let's be honest, it's doing more for your anxiety than your lungs. You're a plague doctor. Welcome to the worst job in history. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing the sleepy map grow. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, boots squelching in something you don't want to identify. The torch in your left hand sputters with every breeze, and in your right, a cane, more for poking corpses than walking. The city is so quiet, you can hear your own breath echoing inside the wooden bird's beak clamped over your face. It's not even dawn yet, but already the plague carts have begun their rounds, wheels creaking like ghost teeth across stone. As you make your way down the narrow street, eyes peer at you from behind shutters. Doors close faster than you can blink. No one wants to talk to you. And who can blame them? You look like death's personal assistant, masked, robed, anonymous, and always arriving just before someone dies. Historians still argue whether this getup actually helped or just scared the bejesus out of everyone. The long-beaked mask was meant to filter miasma, the bad air thought to spread the plague. Herbs stuffed in the snout might mask the stench, sure, but filtering out microscopic bacteria? Yeah, not so much. They didn't even know what bacteria was. You pass by a crumbling chapel where yesterday's corpses were stacked knee-high. No one's collected them yet, and the cats are getting bold. You thump your cane on the stones, and they scatter, though one just stares, eyes glowing like a tiny demon. The silence is so thick it hums in your ears, and the mask doesn't help. It fogs up instantly. Every breath you take is warm, stale, and slightly floral. Lavender, clove, maybe a hint of moldy bread. There's no way to scratch your nose, and your forehead itches constantly under the heavy leather hat that pins your hood in place. You wonder what you look like to them. The people in their homes, curled up under thin blankets, praying you don't knock. Some call you Dr. Beak. Others, less kindly, call you Messenger of Death. It's hard to feel human in this outfit. You're more symbol than person now. You stop outside a door with a crude red X smeared across it. That means plague, or at least suspicion of it. You knock, once, twice. No answer. You hear a soft cough from inside. You wait. This is where your job gets tricky. Do you go in, risk infection, try to help? Or just write "dead soon" on your clipboard and move along? Most times, the answer depends on whether you had breakfast, which today you didn't. It's hard to keep food down when every breath smells like the back of an herb shop set on fire. Eventually, the door opens a crack. A pale face, eyes sunken, stares back. You do your best to sound soothing through a mask designed by nightmares. "Doctor," you say, "I'm here to assess." The woman nods slowly, lets you in. Inside, it's dark and airless. Blankets over the windows. The smell hits instantly. Sweat, bile, rot. There's a child lying on the floor, breathing fast and shallow. You kneel down, careful not to touch anything you don't have to. Your gloves squeak faintly. You don't need to be a doctor to know this child is dying. You're not even sure you are one. Technically, a lot of plague doctors weren't. Many were low-ranking physicians, apprentices, or even random townsfolk with decent handwriting and a tolerance for horrible smells. The important thing was that they looked like doctors, and more importantly, that they were willing to do the job everyone else refused. You ask a few questions, take mental notes, offer the mother a packet of remedies, rose vinegar, camphor, and instructions to burn incense. You're not even sure why. Maybe it gives her hope, or maybe it buys you enough time to not be here when the worst happens. Back outside, the air feels no cleaner. You remove one glove and wipe your forehead, then immediately regret it. Did you just infect yourself? You try not to think about it. Just move on to the next house. Along the street, a man drives a cart loaded with covered bodies. Bring out your dead, he mumbles, though there's no one around to hear. You watch as he hauls a limp shape into the heap, then tips his hat to you with grim respect. It's a strange bond. Two men doing jobs no one wants, surrounded by death, pretending not to feel anything. You move on, one foot in front of the other. Each home you visit is its own quiet tragedy. Some have already crossed over into silence. Others scream at you to go away. One family throws rotten food at your head. You understand. You don't blame them. The sky begins to lighten slightly, a gray smudge through the smoke and mist. Roosters cry weakly somewhere in the distance. You've made it through the night, barely. You lean against a stone wall, heart thudding. Your arms ache. Your head spins. You wonder, not for the first time, how long you can keep doing this. How many more nights like this your body and mind can take. You close your eyes, just for a second. The beak creaks as you exhale. It smells like herbs, yes, but also sweat, leather, and the memory of every home you've entered. And there are hundreds more waiting. The sun never really rises in this part of town. It just seeps in slowly, like a sickly haze. You continue your rounds as morning drags itself across the rooftops, your boots scuffing over slippery cobblestones, the hem of your cloak already wet with something that better not be human. Every step you take is heavy, not just from fatigue, but from the absurdity of what you're wearing. Let's talk about your getup for a moment. You may think this costume is just part of some edgy historical cosplay, but no. This is your protective uniform, designed with all the scientific rigor of a child making armor out of baking trays. Your robe is made of thick canvas or leather, waxed until it's stiff as a corpse. The idea is that it stops bad air from sticking to you. In reality, it traps heat like a medieval oven. Underneath, you're sweating so much that your linen undershirt feels like it's been dunked in soup. You've already got a rash forming on your ribs, and you're starting to smell like a smoked ham left in the sun. And then there's the beak mask. This genius design is supposed to protect you by cramming aromatic herbs into the wooden snout. Think mint, myrrh, or rosemary if you're lucky. If you're not, you get musty lavender, dried rose petals, and a mystery blend that definitely includes something from a spice drawer and possibly a dead squirrel. Each breath through that mask feels like trying to inhale a potpourri sachet through a straw. Worse, it muffles your voice, so you sound like a demon whispering through a barrel. Not ideal when you're trying to calm someone who's just watched their spouse die mid-sentence. Your gloves are heavy leather, and your long cane is both your diagnostic tool and your social distancing stick. You poke patients with it, prod at swollen lymph nodes, lift sheets, nudge open doors, and, occasionally, fend off angry townsfolk. One guy yesterday tried to bite you because he thought plague doctors were actually witches in disguise. You jabbed him in the knee and ran. Historical fact. Yes, plague doctors were occasionally attacked for being symbols of doom. Charming, right? And here's the kicker. None of this gear was actually sterilized. Antiseptic wasn't a concept yet. Your beak mask has probably never been cleaned. The waxed robe may as well be a sponge. And let's not even talk about your boots. You're basically a walking biohazard. Historians still debate whether the costume offered any real protection or just gave everyone a false sense of security. Some argue that by keeping a physical barrier between doctor and patient, it lowered transmission risk slightly. Others say it just made things worse by encouraging reckless contact. But hey, at least you look the part, like a terrifying bird angel of semi-competent death. You take a break in a covered alley, lean against a timber beam, and peel off one glove just long enough to stretch your aching fingers. Your knuckles are raw. You can feel the calluses hardening beneath your nails. It's only day 7 of your civic contract, and already your body is beginning to give out. You glance at a cracked mirror left leaning against a building wall, probably once part of a merchant stall before they fled or died. Your own reflection stares back, warped and hunched. The beak protrudes ominously, your eyes 2 dark hollows behind smoky lenses. You look like a monster even you would run from. Nearby, a street dog paws at a fallen basket of moldy bread. It eyes you warily. Even animals seem to sense you don't belong. You give a tired wave, and it bolts into the fog. Smart dog. You remember the day they gave you this suit. The city council, desperate for someone, anyone, to take the job, outfitted you in this regalia like it was some grand honor. You'll be our guardian, they said, our healer. No one mentioned the heat rash, the stench, or the utter soul-crushing isolation. Some plague doctors tried to modify the outfit. One fellow stitched chicken feathers into his mask, claiming birds couldn't get the plague. Another filled his beak with crushed emeralds, believing they purified air. Spoiler alert, they didn't. That guy didn't last a month. You finish your rest and stand slowly, knees cracking. A church bell rings in the distance. 3 dull tolls. It used to mean morning prayer. Now it just means 3 more deaths. Maybe more. You resume your rounds. A boy waves at you from a shutter. You wave back with 2 fingers, gloved, of course. His face is too clean. That usually means he's already orphaned. You keep moving. The less you know, the less you can mourn later. You pass a vendor's cart, abandoned mid-sale, apples now shriveled and black. A rat scurries over them like it owns the place. In some ways, it does. Rats, of course, are now blamed for the plague. But back then, most people thought it was God, the stars, or bad vibes from strangers. Germ theory wouldn't arrive for centuries. You were just told to avoid bad smells, rub onions on your armpits, or carry sweet-scented satchels, which, incidentally, you do. 3 of them. They smell like spiced regret. You arrive at your next house. A nice one, relatively speaking. Wooden shutters, painted trim. You knock with the cane. No answer. You knock again. The butler cracks the door, eyes red. They're upstairs, he murmurs. She's not well. You ascend the staircase, each creak echoing like it might wake the dead. The patient is a young woman, skin pale, lips cracked. Her breath rattles. Her eyes flicker to your mask, and then away, resigned. You kneel. Observe the buboes under her arm. Swollen, dark, weeping slightly. There's nothing you can do, of course, but you make notes anyway. Offer a small linen pouch of dried herbs. Whisper something comforting. The family is watching, hoping. You try not to meet their eyes as you descend. Outside again, you sigh into your mask. The scent of mint and leather fills your sinuses, cloying and inescapable. You move to the next house. And the next. And the next. Until the day blurs into a long, slow funeral march, and you're the lead mourner in a waxed robe and a bird's face. The light fades, but the day drags on. In your line of work, dusk isn't a signal to rest. It's just when the shadows get longer and people start dying faster. You trudge back through the alleyways, past shuttered windows and homes marked with white crosses or smeared blood, depending on which district you're in. A few places even hang dried garlic from their doors. Not because they think it repels disease, it's to ward off you. That's the real reputation of a plague doctor. Death on two legs. You stop for a moment to adjust the belt cinched around your stiff waxed robe. It digs into your hips like a bad corset, but it holds your tools. Lancets for bloodletting, a jar of leeches, and a pair of iron tongs so rusty you wouldn't use them on toast. Some of these tools are for curing. Others are for performing last rites that technically aren't your job, but no one else is left to do. A merchant flags you down, frantic. He looks healthy enough, well-fed, wearing a fur hat entirely too warm for June. "It's my daughter," he pleads. "Please, she has a fever." You nod, wordlessly following him through twisting alleys to a well-kept stone house, rare in this mostly timber city. You duck to enter, your beak nearly scraping the doorway. Inside, the air is thick with candle smoke and boiled wine. They've tried to mask the smell, but it's there, that coppery, sweet rot that never bodes well. You ascend to a second floor, where the girl lies under 6 layers of quilts, sweating buckets. Her eyes flutter open when she hears your boots. You sit on the edge of the bed, set down your cane, and begin the familiar routine. You check her pulse, rapid. Skin, flushed and slick. You examine under her arms, buboes, swollen, angry purple, the size of pigeon eggs. She winces as you brush them. You ask the father if she's had nosebleeds. He nods. Vomiting. Yes. Has she seen stars? Heard voices? That last one seems to scare him. Yes, he says quietly. She told me the Virgin Mary was speaking through the wall. You don't write that part down. It's not helpful. You open your satchel and consider your options. You could try bloodletting, which might weaken her further. You could try lancing the buboes, but there's always the chance of infection. Not that you have antibiotics, or even clean gauze. Still, you go with the lancet. It's what's expected. You heat the blade over a candle, watching the metal darken and slice gently into the largest swelling. A thin spray of black-red pus dribbles out, foul and clotted. You mop it away with a cloth you've already used twice today. The girl whimpers. Her father winces. Her mother is in the corner, praying hard enough to shake the rafters. You finish your grim procedure, pack your tools, and stand slowly. Cool compresses. Wine. Pray, you say, your voice filtered through the wooden beak, barely human. Then, you hand the father a small wax pouch. Inside is powdered toadstone and crushed pearls. Expensive nonsense, but people need something to believe in. Historical fact, Many plague doctors peddled or recommended bizarre cures, from powdered emerald to unicorn horn. Spoiler alert, none of it worked. But it made the families feel they were doing something, and it kept you from being chased out with a pitchfork. You walk back into the street, and the sky has fully dimmed. Oil lamps flicker in windows like fireflies, but you know better. Most are kept burning in mourning, not in celebration. You pass a line of carts carrying bodies, unmarked, unwrapped, stacked like old laundry. A few fall as the wheels bump over stones. No one stops. No one looks. You don't either. You're suddenly aware of the ache in your lower back. This robe doesn't allow much freedom of movement, and your boots weren't made for walking miles across medieval cobblestone every day. You pass a public fountain and cup some water in your gloved hand. It tastes like tin and moss. You're probably making yourself sicker, but it beats dehydration. For now. At the corner near the butcher's row, you find two apothecaries arguing over a spilled jar of dried marigold petals. One insists it was meant to be burned with sulfur to cleanse the air. The other says it's a waste, and that rose water up the nose works better. Historians still argue whether any of these herbal fumigations had a measurable effect. Honestly, the real benefit may have been forcing people indoors just to avoid the smell. You take note of their suggestions and press on. Every useless remedy is still part of your arsenal. After all, you're not here to cure anyone. You're here to observe, to record, and let's face it, to stall death for a day or two. If you're lucky, you arrive at a tenement block. The landlord begged the city to send someone. That someone is you. The staircase inside creaks with every step, and it smells like urine and candle wax. A cat streaks past your boot as you climb. You knock at the second floor and are greeted by silence. You push the door open. Inside is a room with 4 beds and no movement. A quick glance tells you what you need to know. This is a job for the cartmen, not you. But before you leave, you hear a faint cough. In the corner, behind a curtain, is a boy, maybe 6. Eyes too big for his face. He's bundled in rags and holding a doll made from bundled straw. He doesn't cry. He just looks at you like he knows exactly what you are. You kneel beside him, check his skin. Feverish. No buboes yet. You ask if anyone's been in to see him. He shakes his head. You leave him a satchel of dried herbs and a scrap of clean cloth soaked in wine. You consider taking him with you, just for a second. But no, that's not your job. You are not salvation. You are the last line before burial. You leave him there in the dim candlelight, and as you close the door behind you, you hear him hum something soft, a lullaby. Or maybe it's just the wind through the beams. You step into the night again. There are 5 more houses to visit before midnight. The moon is climbing now, silver and swollen, casting its ghost light over the rooftops and alleys. You've grown used to moving through this after-dark world, like a shadow with a purpose. Less a doctor, more an omen in boots. The town has quieted down. Even the dogs have stopped barking. You tell yourself it's because they're asleep, but deep down, you suspect they're just tired of how things smell lately. Your next stop is a monastery at the edge of town. The monks have written a letter, sealed in beeswax, and sent by a barefoot courier who coughed twice while delivering it. A bad sign, but not the worst. You follow the curve of the river, passing a crumbling wall that once kept invaders out. Now it barely keeps the rats in. On a different night, you'd pause to enjoy the ripple of the water, maybe even the bell frogs, but not tonight. Tonight, you keep walking. When you arrive, the gates creak open like a protest. A novice greets you, face half covered with a woolen scarf, soaked in vinegar. You'd laugh if it weren't so painfully familiar. Father Ambrose is ill, he whispers. He's been seeing visions. Of course he has. That's what fever does. You step through the cloister, your beak echoing against stone walls as you cross the courtyard. Candles burn low on every windowsill. A bell rings, not for prayer, but for death. Another monk has passed. They don't even name them anymore. Just the hour and the initials carved into the book by the door. You glance at it. Tierce. Brother, L.M., no tears. No time for them. In the infirmary, Father Ambrose lies on a straw pallet. He's gaunt, eyes sunk deep into their sockets, but still lucid. He smiles when he sees you, which honestly feels worse than the usual reaction. He mutters something about the end times, then points to his chest. You undo his robe slightly and inspect the swelling just under his collarbone. Not buboes, something else. You check his pulse. Steady. Maybe he just has the sweating sickness or a bad case of fear. You prescribe him a poultice of honey and dried sage wrapped in linen. It won't do anything, but it's soft, and sometimes softness is all anyone wants. Before you go, he presses a small wooden token into your hand, a carved lamb. For protection, he says. You tuck it into your belt, though honestly, your beak is doing most of the protecting. Mainstream historical fact: many monasteries in medieval Europe served as makeshift hospitals, and monks, despite their faith, often succumbed in large numbers during plague years due to their close contact with the sick. That said, a few records bizarrely claim whole orders mysteriously avoided infection. Historians still argue whether strict isolation, divine luck, or sheer underreporting is to thank. Outside again, the air feels heavier, the clouds low. A mist creeps from the river, swirling between buildings like the ghost of better days. You pull your collar tighter. Your robe has absorbed so many layers of smoke, sweat, and vinegar, it smells like burnt salad dressing with a dash of livestock. But it's the only barrier between you and the miasma people believe causes all this. Whether it's foul air, sin, or celestial punishment, everyone has a theory. You turn down Minster Lane and see the flickering of lanterns ahead. A family waits for you in the street, clustered around a handcart piled with linens. She won't wake up, the eldest boy says. He's maybe 12, already taller than his father, and his voice is as flat as an old board. They've brought their grandmother out to meet you. Still alive, it turns out. Just sunk so deep into fever that she looks carved from wax. Her skin is yellowing. Her breath rattles like beans in a cup. You shine your lantern on her face and try a few questions. No response. You touch her wrist. The pulse is faint, but present. You nod. She's not gone yet. The mother asks if they should pray or prepare her for burial. You pause, because honestly, it could go either way. Do both, you say, but keep her warm. And if she starts coughing blood, move. You don't mention where to move to. There's nowhere safe. You give the family a satchel of chamomile and wormwood, then ask for some water. The boy hands you a bucket, and you wash your gloves in silence. They stare at you the whole time. Not with fear, with hope. Somehow that's worse. You move on. By now your shoulders ache. Your head swims from the constant press of scented herbs stuffed into your beak. You take out one packet, rosemary and clove, and replace it with mint. Not that it helps. The smell of death always finds a way in. like a leak in a roof you can't patch. Next up is the tannery quarter, where skin is stripped, scraped, and soaked in lye. You don't need a lantern to find your way. You just follow the stench. You arrive to find a small crowd already gathered. A tanner lies curled on the ground beside his vat, eyes open but clouded, limbs twitching. His apprentice says he drank from the wrong cask, one meant for soaking hides. It was an accident, the boy swears, eyes wide. He thought it was cider. Quirky tidbit. This actually happened more than once. In cities where ale, vinegar, tanning acid, and urine were all stored in similar barrels, mix-ups were not uncommon. Occupational hazards weren't always disease. Sometimes they were just really bad labeling. You check the man's breath. Shallow, sour. His lips are burnt raw. There's nothing you can do. You leave a cloth soaked in cold water and advise the boy to keep him shaded. You'd offer a prayer if you still believed they stuck. As you turn away, the boy calls out, "Are we cursed?" You don't answer. Partly because the honest answer might be yes. You walk back through the narrow lanes, your lantern now flickering with a dying flame. The city is quieter than ever. A few figures dart across rooftops. Cats, you think, hopefully. You pass a wall where someone has scrawled in charcoal, "Bring out your dead." It's become a cruel catchphrase, almost a joke. Almost. You're heading home, or rather, to your assigned lodging. It's an attic above a spice merchant shop. The irony is not lost on you. You climb the stairs, each creak a small protest. You unlatch the door, remove your beaked mask, and finally inhale unfiltered air. Not that it's much better. You strip off your gloves, your robe, your boots. Your feet are pale and pruned like you've spent all day in a bath, not pacing across a dying town. You sit on a crate and eat a crust of rye bread, rock hard, but yours. You don't remember when you last drank anything that wasn't wine-soaked or boiled. Lying back on the straw mattress, you stare up at the slanted roof. The wind hisses through the beams. You close your eyes. The faces of the girl, the monk, the boy. They follow you into sleep like shadows with names. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Morning doesn't come with birdsong anymore. The plague has chased away anything with wings or instinct. Instead, you wake to the dry clang of the cathedral bell. 3 short tolls. That's the signal for a fresh cart of bodies. You roll over on your straw mattress, joints stiff, mouth dry, spine aching. The air is thick with the lingering scent of incense and death. Both have seeped into everything. You drag yourself up, not because you're rested, but because resting doesn't help anymore. You put on your boots with a grunt, pull on your gloves, and stare at your mask hanging from the hook. The beak looks more like a bird of prey than a healer's tool. You lift it, adjust the mint and rose petals inside, and fasten it over your face. Just another day, being everyone's least favorite visitor. Your first stop is a merchant's home near the market square. His wife sent word during the night, something about black spots and unusual smells. You're not hopeful. The house is 3 stories tall, fancy by town standards, with carved beams and red-tinted shutters. You knock. No answer. So you knock again, this time with the butt of your cane. The door creaks open, and a servant peeks out, visibly trembling. "He's upstairs," she says, eyes darting to the stairwell as though the very mention might bring a curse. You step inside and are immediately hit with the thick, waxy odor of sick flesh and spoiled fruit. The hall is lined with expensive tapestries. now speckled with soot from hastily burned incense. You make your way up, passing paintings of hunting dogs and saints who seem to look away from you in pity. The merchant lies in a velvet-draped bed, shirtless, breathing heavily. His skin is marbled purple, and the lymph nodes under his arms bulge like rotten apples. Mainstream historical fact: those telltale swellings, buboes, often appeared in the groin, armpits, or neck and could grow to the size of an egg or even an orange. They were the unmistakable signature of bubonic plague, and doctors like you couldn't do much more than lance them and hope the patient didn't bleed out or succumb to infection. You lean in to examine him, keeping your movements calm and deliberate. His wife stands nearby, hands wringing, eyes wild with panic. "We've tried everything," she whispers. "Leeches, boiled nettles, a bloodletting 3 days ago." You nod, mostly for her sake. "I'll apply a mustard poultice," you say. Again, it won't help, but it feels like doing something. You open your satchel and mix powdered mustard seed with vinegar-soaked cloth. As you wrap it around his torso, he groans and mutters something about coins buried in the orchard. Probably nothing. Possibly everything. The wife clasps your arm as you stand. Will he die? You give her the only honest answer you have. Most do. On the way out, the servant hands you a pouch of silver. You don't refuse it. You've stopped feeling guilty about that sort of thing. Money won't save anyone, but you can use it to bribe your way through locked gates or buy cleaner water when things get worse. Outside, the town square is nearly empty, except for a few scavenging dogs and 2 grave diggers sharing a flask. You give them a nod. They nod back like soldiers on the same side of a war no one asked to fight. You move toward your next appointment. Though appointment is generous. It's more of a hunch, honestly. A woodcutter's daughter said her mother started smelling like meat left out too long. That's enough of a lead these days. The woodcutter's cottage sits by the edge of the forest, the trees looming like silent judges. You step through the gate and into a yard littered with stacked firewood and overturned buckets. The door is ajar. You knock, then step inside when no one answers. The woman is on the floor, curled into a tight spiral, limbs contorted. Her eyes are open, her mouth too. But there's no breath. Her skin is gray, her hands stiff. A scythe leans against the wall nearby, forgotten. A plate of uneaten stew sits congealing on the table. You don't move her. There's no point. Instead, you search for signs of anyone else. A blanket in the corner, disturbed. A child's wooden toy under the table. You call out softly, "Hello?" A rustle from under the bed. You crouch and lift the blanket edge. 2 eyes peer out, wide, glassy, terrified. A girl, maybe 6 or 7. Her nose red, her cheeks streaked with tears. She's wrapped in a wool cloak that's too big for her. She doesn't speak. She doesn't blink. You hold out your hand, gloved and trembling slightly. "It's all right," you say, not knowing if it is. She doesn't move. You leave her a loaf of bread and a small flask of boiled wine. You whisper that someone will return for her soon. Whether that's true or not depends on how merciful fate feels this week. Outside again, the sun is higher, but offers no warmth. You make your way through alleys where shutters bang in the breeze and doors are marked with chalk crosses. A child watches you from a window, chewing on a leather strap. You raise your hand. He doesn't wave back. You head next to the barber's workshop. Normally, it would be loud with banter and the shriek of razors. Today, it's silent. The door is open, swinging slowly in the wind. Inside, the barber sits in his chair, head slumped. He's holding his own wrist, trying to staunch a wound. Self-bleeding, you murmur, brave or desperate. He looks up, pale and woozy. Too much. You kneel beside him. Little bit. You unroll a clean cloth and bind his arm. Next time, maybe just try garlic tea. Fringe tidbit. Some medieval people swore by crushed emeralds as a remedy for plague, drinking the dust in wine. Barber here seems to have gone the cheaper, messier route. Historians still argue whether treatments like these extended life, shortened it, or were just a slow-motion goodbye. You leave the shop and glance down the main road. A cart rolls past with 6 wrapped bodies. The driver doesn't stop. He just nods once and keeps moving. You keep walking too. By evening, you've been to 6 homes. 3 of them held corpses. One held a drunk priest trying to exorcise the illness with Latin and holy water. You helped him into a chair and suggested he stop drinking from the same cup he uses to bless the sick. Your legs are heavy. Your mask smells of wilting herbs. Your hands tremble as you pull off your gloves in the twilight. You've never hated silence more. Even the dogs have given up barking. Back in your attic room, you light a candle and stare at the flame until your vision blurs. You think of the little girl, of the merchant's wife, of the self-bleeding barber. You wonder what tomorrow will bring. But you already know. More knocking, more death, more walking. You wake the next morning with your head full of smoke and ringing bells, though neither are actually there. It's just how mornings feel now. A sort of phantom weight, like grief without a name. You sit up slowly, your back protests, your legs ache. Your soul, if it still resides anywhere inside you, gives a reluctant shrug. Today, you decide you'll visit the almonry near St. Wulfstan's Abbey. Not because you think they've found a cure, but because word has it they've started a new ritual, bathing the sick in warm ale before prayer. Desperate times breed, creatively questionable ideas. You strap on your beak mask again. The scent inside is starting to turn. Even dried lavender gets tired of pretending it can overpower rot. You switch it out for rosemary and mint leaves. One of your few luxuries is still pretending that smells can protect you. Outside, the street is quieter than yesterday. That should be good news, but it isn't. Less noise usually means more shutters closed from the inside, more bodies cooling behind locked doors. You pass a well, roped off with planks and a painted sign. Do not draw, cursed. Right. Better a curse than cholera, maybe. You nod to a passing washerwoman, hauling what looks like clean linens, but smells like camphor and dread. Her eyes dart toward your mask, then downward, avoiding eye contact, as if that might somehow keep her safe. No one ever wants to meet your gaze anymore, even through glass lenses. The almonry lies behind the abbey, nestled between 2 sagging barns that once stored wheat. Now, they hold the dying. Monks with dark circles under their eyes shuffle between doorways, gently chanting. Their Latin, little more than murmured habit. Inside the almonry, the smell hits you first. Yeast, mildew, and something sharp underneath. A young novice greets you, hands freshly scrubbed, robes wrinkled. You've come to see the experiment? He asks, as though this is a lecture hall. You nod and follow him through a corridor of moans and whispered prayers. The bathing room, formerly the monastery's wine cellar, is dim and humid. You squint through the candle light at a large wooden tub filled with frothing ale. A young woman lies inside, her face pale and serene, lips parted in sleep or unconsciousness. Mainstream historical fact: medieval monks and religious orders were often the frontline caregivers during plague outbreaks. They ran hospitals, tended to the sick, and conducted last rites. Many died for their efforts, some because of proximity to the infected, others from sheer exhaustion. The bathwater smells strange, too sweet, with a sour undertone. You step closer and peer at her neck. Buboes, high fever, pulse fluttering like a trapped sparrow. Someone's tied a crucifix to her wrist with a strip of linen, as if that might bribe death into walking past. You don't say much. You don't need to. The novice asks, "Do you think it'll work?" You pause, give a little shrug. "If it doesn't," you say, "at least she dies, warm and drunk." From another room, you hear a sharp, wet cough, followed by silence. You don't flinch anymore when that happens. Neither does the novice. You step outside into the abbey courtyard and sit on a stone bench to rest your legs. Across from you, a monk tends to the herb garden. He's humming, a haunting little melody that sounds older than the plague itself. You watch him prune rue and wormwood like it still matters. He looks up and smiles faintly. "We're all just guests here," he says. "Some stay longer than others." Fringe tidbit. Some medieval texts suggest planting rue around your house would keep out not only sickness, but witches, bad dreams, and even serpents. You consider asking the monk for a few sprigs. Can't hurt. You wander back into town as the sun climbs lazily above the rooftops. You pass a scriber's shop where parchment now goes unused. No new contracts, no poetry, no love letters. Just a sign scrawled on the door. Closed until God forgives us. Farther down, you spot something strange. A small crowd gathered around a painted puppet show. Someone has set up a miniature stage and is reenacting the dance of death with jointed wooden figures. The nobleman, the nun, the drunkard, the child. One by one, they're pulled from behind a curtain by a bony marionette in a black robe. The crowd watches in silence. A few children laugh, high, sharp giggles that quickly fade. You stop to watch. There's something grotesquely comforting about it. Death made funny. Predictable. You wonder if it helps. Then you realize the puppeteer is coughing. Historians still argue whether such plague-themed puppet shows were cautionary tales, simple gallows humor, or communal therapy. You're betting on all three. You keep walking. Your next stop is the butcher's district. It always smells foul, but these days, the stench has its own personality. Half the shops are shuttered. A dog trots past with something suspiciously pink dangling from its jaws. You choose not to investigate. You knock on the door of one of the larger houses. A butcher's widow answered your letter with a plea scrawled in charcoal. He stopped moving, but I think he still breathes. She answers now, face pale, hands trembling. He's in the back. Please, do what you can. The man lies on a blood-stained cot, surrounded by flies. His chest rises, but only barely. You can tell right away. He won't make it. Still, you kneel and take his wrist. It's hot, his skin mottled. A rash creeps up his belly, like cracked leather. You mix vinegar with crushed sage and dab it onto his skin. You whisper something kind. You don't remember what. You're not even sure he hears you. When you leave, the widow asks, "Should I pray?" You pause on the doorstep. If it brings you peace. You don't say what you're thinking, that prayers are being offered faster than heaven can possibly file them. You make your way back toward the river, hoping the breeze will be strong enough to clear your head. You pass a group of children skipping stones. Their laughter is jarring, almost obscene, but it's also beautiful. You pause, watching one stone bounce twice, then sink. For a moment, you allow yourself to smile. Then the breeze shifts, carrying with it the sweet, sour scent of death. Somewhere nearby, another home has gone quiet. You turn back toward the path. There's always another door to knock on. By the time you reach the edge of the market square, the sun is already slanting low, casting long shadows that make every silhouette look a little too thin, a little too still. You pause beneath a sagging awning once used to shade ripe apples, now shading a stack of firewood and a cluster of wilted herbs bound with twine. The air tastes like boiled onions, smoke, and regret. You're not here to buy anything. You're here to collect something worse: rumors. A haggard merchant named Reeve nods towards you from his stall, where he sells plague protection bundles. You raise a brow behind your mask. He grins and picks up a pouch containing rosemary, a rabbit's foot, and, wait, is that a small frog skull? You don't even bother asking. Sales going well? You ask dryly. He shrugs. Well enough that I haven't starved. Not so well that I haven't thought about faking a seizure just to clear the line. You chuckle. Just barely. You stroll through the square, listening to snippets of hushed voices. The midwife says the baby came out blue. They buried him at dawn. No priest. A woman in Dunfield boiled her husband's boots and drank the broth. You file that last one away. Fringe tidbit. People really did drink leather broth when food was scarce. They'd boil shoes, belts, or even saddle straps into soup. It was a thing. Not a good thing, but a thing. A young boy tugs on your cloak. You look down and see a freckled face, too pale for his age. "Sir Doctor," he says in a stage whisper, "our cat brought a rat inside and now my sister won't wake up. Is it the plague?" You crouch to his level and soften your voice. "Where's your mother?" "Crying," he says simply. You stand, gently remove his hand from your cloak, and follow him. The house is narrow and dim, filled with the scent of dried lavender and moldy bread. His sister lies curled on a straw mat. Her lips are blue, her chest still. Your breath catches, just for a moment. The boy watches you. You reach down, pull the tattered blanket up to cover her face. "She's sleeping," you whisper. "You did good coming to get help." He nods. Then after a pause, "Can you make her better?" You lie. No one is better at sleeping than she is now. The mother appears in the doorway, tears running silently. You give her a long look. No advice, no herbs, no false comfort. Just the presence of someone who came. You step outside, heart heavier than your satchel. Mainstream historical fact. Many cities employed public plague doctors who were paid by the town and expected to visit the poor as well as the wealthy. Most had little formal medical training, but were still the only help available for the masses. You wander next to the Tanner's Row, where the smell is strong enough to knock sense out of a monk. Skins hang from beams, stiff with curing agents, flies dancing gleefully over everything. You duck into a shadowed alley to breathe through your mask and gag a little in private. Suddenly, movement to your left. You freeze. Then, a girl, maybe 10, darting from a doorway. Her eyes lock with yours. She makes a sign, 3 fingers crossed over her chest, then runs. A local superstition. Some say plague doctors can steal your soul just by meeting your gaze. You suppose that's fair. You take a shortcut past the town baths, long since closed, and make your way toward the mill pond where the quarantine tent stands. It's a sagging patchwork of canvas and damp wool, tucked behind a copse of poplars. Only the truly feared cases are sent here. those who might still live but shouldn't return home. A guard at the edge nods at you with tired eyes. 3 new ones, he mutters. 1 priest, 1 soldier, 1, dunno, just a man. Inside, it's quiet. Too quiet. You hear flies before you hear breathing. The priest lies closest to the entrance. His robes are crusted with vomit. His hands tremble as they form a cross in the air. You kneel and offer water. He declines, voice hoarse. If this is God's will, he rasps, then let it be. You wonder if he really believes that. The soldier is next. His armor lies in a heap beside him, blood-slick and dented. A makeshift bandage is tied around his leg. Buboes are visible near his groin. You change the dressing. He doesn't flinch. Tell my commander I died brave, he murmurs. Sure, you say, knowing no one's reporting to anyone anymore. The 3rd man, well, he's already gone. You check anyway. No pulse. A small wooden charm lies beside him, shaped like a fox. You take it and tuck it into your pouch. Maybe for luck. Historians still argue whether these quarantine tents helped or merely delayed the inevitable. Some were hotbeds of cross-infection. Others spared entire families by isolating a single sufferer. As you step outside the tent, the air hits your face like a slap. The world feels less contained. Like death has seeped through the seams. You sit under the poplars, exhale, and loosen your mask just enough to taste fresh air. A soft wind stirs the grass. The sun edges downward. You hear a bird for the first time in days, a nightingale. You sit with it for a while, eyes closed, letting its song fill the space that grief usually occupies. Then quietly, you put the mask back on. You rise. There's always someone else waiting. You're halfway back to your quarters when a boy throws a stone at you. It clangs off your mask with a hollow clink, startling more than hurting. You turn your head slowly, catching sight of the little imp bolting behind a cart of rotting turnips. He's laughing, but there's no real malice in it, just the chaos of fear wearing a child's face. It happens more often now. You, the plague doctor, are no longer seen as a healer. You're a walking omen, a leather and glass warning sign that someone inside is already as good as dead, that every door you enter marks a home soon to be boarded shut. Some folks spit when you pass. Others whisper blessings or clutch amulets. You've seen women cross themselves and men cross the street. You remind them not of safety, but of endings. You've become folklore in your own lifetime. You pass a crumbling inn with broken shutters. Once, this place was raucous with laughter and spilled mead. Now it stands like a husk. Someone has carved "Plague eats the greedy" into the door. You note the irony, because greed hasn't stopped, not even now. A man calls to you from the alley behind the baker's. "Doctor." "Over here." He's a portly fellow in sooty robes, likely a merchant. You follow, cautiously. He gestures to a cellar door. "My daughter's down there," he whispers. "Been hiding her. She's showing signs." You hesitate. Why hide her? He glances around, voice lower. "The neighbors, they're watching. They saw your mask yesterday. If they think she's ill, they'll tell the reeve, and she'll be dragged to the tent. I just need your help. Quietly." You sigh. It's always quietly. You descend into the cellar. It's dim, air thick with yeast and mildew. The girl lies on a blanket between crates of wine. Her skin is pale, cheeks flushed. Sweat beads her brow. She stirs at your approach. "Papa?" she murmurs. "No, love," you say softly, kneeling beside her. "I'm the other one." You check her glands, swollen, throat raw. No rash. Pulse. Fast, but steady. It might not be plague. It might be any of the 1,000 lesser illnesses that make life miserable, but not necessarily short. You take a strip of clean cloth from your bag, dampen it, and place it gently across her forehead. Let her rest, you say to the merchant. No guarantees, but no need to panic. Yet. He looks at you, a mix of relief and suspicion. What do I owe? You shake your head. Your daughter's heartbeat was payment enough. He doesn't thank you, just nods and shows you the way out. Mainstream historical fact. Plague doctors often worked freelance, not bound to any hospital or guild, which meant they negotiated fees directly with families, sometimes before treatment. Others were municipally appointed and paid a fixed wage. Either way, they rarely enjoyed the gratitude of their patients. You walk past a church that's been converted into a morgue. The bell hasn't rung in weeks, not since the priest fell ill and was discovered 2 days later. Lips black, fingers curled like burnt paper. Inside, rows of the dead lie under makeshift shrouds. You don't enter. You've done that once already this week. The sound of weeping behind the altar is enough. A woman praying, or bargaining. You turn away. Further down, a tavern has been repurposed into an apothecary. Outside, a wooden board lists miracle cures, angelica root, vinegar tincture, powdered unicorn horn. Spoiler, it's just ground up antler. And even powdered mummy. Yes, literal ancient Egyptian mummy flesh. It's called mumia and was believed to hold healing properties. Quirky? Definitely. Effective? Not at all. You duck inside, not because you need anything, but because curiosity itches. A thin man with round spectacles and a velvet cap greets you with exaggerated politeness. Ah, a fellow in the noble trade of health. May I interest you in my rarest elixir, imported saffron, crushed emerald, and a whisper of mercury. You glance at the bottle. It's mostly swamp water and wishful thinking. How's business? You ask. He shrugs, counting coins. Booming. Fear is a fine marketing agent. You don't disagree. You've seen the inside of enough homes to know that desperation is the most potent ingredient in any medicine. Historians still argue whether these pseudo-apothecaries prolonged suffering or offered genuine comfort. The line between charlatan and caregiver blurred in times of chaos. Sometimes, a false hope was the only kind available. You exit into twilight. The wind carries the scent of ashes. Someone's burning their linens again. A preventative measure. Entire wardrobes have vanished this way, up in smoke, with the hope that fire might save what medicine cannot. You pass a group of washerwomen boiling their clothes in enormous vats. One glares at you. Too late for masks, she mutters. What we need is a priest, not a plague crow. You tip your hat. Try both, you offer. Double the odds. She snorts, but doesn't argue. By now, the town has dimmed. Lamps flicker in windows. The streets begin to empty. You head back toward the edge of the city, where your quarters lie in a cottage formerly belonging to a fur trader. You picked it because it was already halfway empty. No one wanted it, not with the stench of old pelts soaked into the walls. Inside, you remove the mask. Slowly, reverently. Your face feels alien without it. You wash your hands, scrub your nails, and soak your tools in wine and vinegar. You change your gloves. Then you sit. Just sit. For the first time today, you allow the silence to settle. It presses against your chest like a weighted blanket. You imagine all the people you saw. Those who lived. Those who didn't. Those in between. You try not to think about the ones you'll see tomorrow. You pick up a book, an old copy of Galen's works. You read a few lines. None of it will help. But it's ritual, and rituals hold us together when reason snaps. Outside, an owl hoots. You glance at the window. Night has fully arrived. You extinguish your lantern. You let the dark take the room. Morning comes in shades of gray. Your bones creak as you rise, the cold creeping into every joint, like it's got something to prove. You stretch, then immediately regret it. There's an ache in your back from sleeping on straw-stuffed linen. It's not the worst bed you've had, just the one that hasn't betrayed you. Yet. You clean your instruments again. Because why not? Routine is the only shield you have against madness. The mask gets a fresh rub of beeswax across its seams, and you insert a new batch of herbs: lavender, mint, and a sprig of wormwood. It doesn't actually stop anything, but the smell reminds you there's still such a thing as pleasant. The bell at the city gate rings 5 times. Another body cart, you guess. As you slip the mask over your face again, your breath fogs the glass eye holes for a moment. It's like watching your soul disappear into mist. Today's schedule includes a return visit to the convent. The sisters had sent a message via a courier boy who swore he was definitely not sick. You saw the rash blooming behind his ear, but said nothing. By now, everyone's a courier of something. The convent is still standing. Miraculous, considering it's housed over a dozen confirmed cases. The nuns are resolute. Faith gives them courage, or maybe it just gives them purpose. You're not sure which is better. Sister Amaria meets you at the gate. She's worse, she says. Mother Joanna. You nod. Take me to her. The abbess lies curled on a cot in the infirmary. Her breathing's shallow, her skin parchment pale. You kneel beside her, take her hand gently. It's warm. Too warm. The fever's blazing now. I'm not afraid, she whispers. Only tired. You admire her honesty. Most say they aren't afraid. Fewer mean it. You do what you can. Cool her brow. Whisper prayers in Latin she probably knows better than you. You leave behind a small bundle of yarrow and a note for dosing poppy milk. It won't cure her. It might make the end a little quieter. As you turn to go, Sister Amaria stops you. There's something else, she says, lowering her voice. We found a boy. In the cellar, a boy. 13, maybe 14, starving. Said his parents locked him in to protect him. They bring him up. Small, filthy, eyes like a spooked deer. You kneel, hold out a gloved hand. He flinches, but doesn't run. They're dead now, he says simply. Do you feel sick? You ask. He shrugs. I feel alone. You ask the sisters to feed him. Let him stay for a few nights. He doesn't need medicine right now. He needs kindness. Mainstream historical fact. Convents and monasteries often became makeshift hospitals during plague outbreaks due to their isolation, cleanliness, and the discipline of their inhabitants. Many clergy died in service, often at higher rates than the general population. Leaving the convent, you pass a man nailing a sign to his door. God save the righteous, it reads in bold letters. Superstition is as viral as the plague. People hang bundles of rosemary from their lintels, wear garlic around their necks, draw chalk circles on the ground. One man you saw last week swore by bathing in vinegar every 3 hours. Another painted his horse with runes and declared it immune. People will try anything. Historians still argue whether these rituals prolonged survival or just prolonged denial. But in a world unraveling, even illusion brings comfort. You stop at a well to draw water. A woman standing nearby stares at you, arms crossed. My daughter died the day after you came, she says, voice cold. I'm sorry, you answer, and you mean it. You didn't save her. No. She slaps you, open palm, right across the mask. You don't react. Just stand there. She's shaking now. Not from rage, but grief. She turns and walks away without another word. You don't chase her. What could you say that hasn't been said 100 times? You return to the street where the boy threw a stone days ago. The cart of rotting turnips is gone. In its place, a crude shrine made of dried flowers, candles, and a single stuffed doll. You kneel. Light one of the stubs with your flint. The flame flickers briefly, then holds. Another stop today. The tanner's shop. You'd been summoned by a crude note smeared with ink and something stickier. Inside, the place reeks of lye, urine, and death. The tanner himself is lying on a board used to scrape hides. His breathing sounds like wet parchment being torn. You examine him. Groin buboes. Not good. You lance one carefully, draining the pus. It's all you can do. You bandage the wound and leave him a decoction of barley water and crushed garlic. He tries to pay you in leather. You wave it off. He insists. Something to remember me by, he wheezes. You take a strip of dark hide, tuck it into your bag. Maybe it'll patch your gloves later. Quirky historical tidbit. Some plague doctors added strips of leather or waxed fabric to their robes, not just for protection, but because they believed thicker garments could resist disease by preventing miasma from sticking. Some even carried talismans stitched into their hems, like dried frogs or handwritten prayers. Outside, two men argue loudly in the street. One swears the plague is divine punishment. The other says it's the stars. Mars is in the wrong house again. You think of the chart you saw posted outside the astrologer's shop. Saturn weeping over Europe, Jupiter turning his back. Astronomy meets prophecy, meets hysteria. You don't weigh in, not your field. You pass the graveyard. It's growing. What used to be rows are now pits. The gravediggers nod as you walk by. You nod back. There's a camaraderie in shared doom. The sky darkens earlier these days. Autumn's creeping in. And with it, a fresh wave of worry. Cold brings coughs. Coughs bring panic. And panic, well, you've seen what panic does. You make one last visit. A small home with a single candle burning in the window. It's the sign you agreed on with the widow who lives there. A candle means, please come. She greets you at the door. It's me, she says. I think it's come for me. You sit with her for a while. Take her pulse. She's warm, yes, but not fevered. Her glands are fine. Lungs clear. I think, you say gently, you're scared. She nods, her eyes well with tears. Do you stay until morning? You do. You stay, in the chair by her hearth. Mask on the table, gloves folded neatly in your lap. She falls asleep eventually. You don't. Just sit, listening to the fire crackle, watching the shadows breathe. Dawn creeps in again, reluctant and pale. You rise, weary as ever, and lace up your boots, with fingers that tremble more from exhaustion than cold. Your clothes smell faintly of smoke and damp straw. And the mask feels heavier today, as if the leather itself mourns the dead. Your schedule is brutal, unrelenting, a carousel spinning too fast to jump off. But today, you've been summoned to a lord's manor, a place dripping with opulence and whispered rumors. The irony isn't lost on you. Gold and silk won't shield them here. The carriage ride is bumpy and suffocating, the horses' hooves clattering a grim soundtrack. As you approach the manor, servants eye you like a plague-shaped shadow. Fear, disdain, and curiosity all mixed in their glances. Inside, The grand halls echo with silence, the heavy tapestries muted. A servant leads you to the Lord's chamber, where a man lies propped against embroidered pillows, pale and sweating, his breathing shallow, like wind through dead leaves. You check him thoroughly. Swollen lymph nodes, darkened blotches spreading across his skin. This is no ordinary fever. This is the Black Death in its cruelest form. The Lord grimaces, eyes fluttering. Will I live? You hesitate. The truth weighs too heavy to speak aloud. There is hope, you say carefully, but it is fragile. He nods, eyes glassy. Do what you must. You begin your ministrations, lancing buboes, applying poultices of crushed herbs mixed with vinegar, whispering the faintest prayers between each action. The wardens watch silently, a mixture of skepticism and desperate hope. In the corner, a jester once beloved but now forgotten coughs quietly. His costume is tattered, his face streaked with grime. The plague does not discriminate. You move on after an hour, your limbs aching, hands trembling. The Lord's condition is tenuous, but at least he breathes. Outside the manor, you take a moment to catch your breath. The sun hangs low and heavy in the sky, casting long shadows over the cobbled streets. You can hear faint laughter from the market. Faint, but alive. You almost forget the weight you carry. Almost. You notice a peculiar sight. A man, hunched and ragged, selling strange trinkets from a wooden cart. Talisman for protection, he calls, holding up a carved bone shaped like a tiny bat. You approach, curiosity piqued despite yourself. He tells you it's blessed by the witches of the forest and guarantees immunity. You bite back a smile. In times like these, desperation breeds all sorts of commerce. You purchase a token anyway, not for belief, but for the absurdity of it. Historians still argue whether these talismans had any psychological effect on their wearers, or merely served as placebo comfort during chaos. You walk back to the city proper, thinking about the delicate dance between hope and despair. Passing the apothecaries again, you glimpse inside. The thin man behind the counter counts coins with a grin that's almost maniacal. Fear sells better than any herb. In the market square, you hear a tale about a man who supposedly survived the plague by eating nothing but onions and garlic for weeks. You laugh softly. The idea of survival, through pungent vegetables, might be folklore, but it makes for good gossip. You stop by a grave, freshly dug, a double-wide pit where two coffins rest side by side. The stench is unbearable. A gravedigger stands nearby, wiping sweat from his brow. He tells you stories, some hopeful, many tragic. People you've seen, names you've heard. His voice is steady but tired. You ask if he ever dreams about the dead. He shrugs. Not anymore. They haunt the living, but the dead, they're just gone. You consider the nature of death, how it's both the end and the beginning of so many stories. Returning to your quarters, you find the boy from the convent waiting outside, clutching a small bundle of bread. He looks up, shy. I thought you might be hungry. You smile beneath your mask. Hunger is a cruel companion, but kindness, you realize, might be the rarest medicine of all. You share the bread with him, sitting quietly in the morning light as the city wakes. Evening falls like a wet blanket. You find yourself drawn to the church again, the stone walls humming with prayers and sorrow. The clergy have been buried in their own numbers, but the bells still toll. Each ring a slow, mournful heartbeat counting down the dead. Inside, the candles flicker against stained glass saints, whose eyes seem to follow you with both pity and accusation. You kneel, mask still on, gloves tucked in your lap, and say a silent prayer for the souls you couldn't save, and maybe for your own. Outside, the street smells sharper tonight, burnt wood and wet earth, mingled with the sickly sweetness of decay. Rats scuttle in the shadows, their twitchy noses sniffing the air, unafraid of you, as if they own the night now. You remember reading that rats were long blamed for spreading the plague, their fleas acting as tiny, deadly couriers. But historians still argue whether it was rats or human fleas and lice that truly carried the bacteria. The truth is as slippery as the shadows under the tavern doors. Your next stop is a small tavern where a group of peasants huddle around a sputtering fire. They eye you warily, but don't run. Some are too sick, others too tired. One offers you a cup of watered-down ale. You accept. It's the closest thing to medicine you've had all day. They share stories between coughs. A farmer talks of losing his entire crop. A woman whispers about her husband disappearing into the woods, convinced he'd find salvation there. You listen, nodding quietly. It's not your place to correct or console, just to be present. One man cracks a joke about how the plague might be a clever way for the king to reduce taxes. The laughter is rough, but genuine. In the dim light, you spot a wooden mask hanging on the wall, carved with crude eyes and a long beak, a parody of your own. Someone has tried to make light of the darkness. You laugh softly. Humor is a fragile thing in these times, but it's also a kind of armor. After leaving, you find a group of children playing a game in the street, though their laughter is brittle, almost scared. One girl wears a doll dressed like a plague doctor, mask and all. It makes you wonder about legacy. What stories will survive you, and what will be forgotten? You visit a healer known for her potions and charms, a woman with wild gray hair and eyes like embers. She invites you in, offers a cup of nettle tea. Her tiny house smells of herbs and smoke. She tells you that she's been watching you, the plague doctor with the bird mask, and asks if you believe in the spirits. You shrug. I believe in what I can see and touch. She smiles knowingly. Sometimes that's all we have. Historians still argue whether spiritual beliefs helped or hindered plague responses. Some say faith offered solace. Others that superstition prolonged suffering. You leave with a small bundle of herbs, hyssop, sage, and rue, tied with red thread. Whether it works or not, you'll carry it. Back on the street, you pause at the edge of a fresh pit. A line of bodies waits, wrapped in sheets, silent and endless. You breathe deeply, savoring the cold air, the crunch of gravel underfoot. A distant bell tolls, a reminder that life goes on, even when it feels like everything is ending. The chill of dawn sinks into your bones as you prepare once again for the day's grim duties. Your leather gloves creak as you tighten them, and the mask, your ever-present companion, presses cold against your face. The beak, stuffed with fragrant herbs meant to ward off the invisible killer, feels heavier than ever. You trudge through narrow streets, slick with morning dew, and the unspoken fears of the townsfolk. Everyone avoids your gaze, and you can't blame them. The sight of you means death is near, and in their eyes, you might as well be the Grim Reaper's apprentice. Today, your journey takes you to the city's makeshift hospital, a grim collection of tents and wooden shacks hastily erected to cope with the swelling tide of the infected. The air here is thick with sickness and despair, mingling with the sharp tang of vinegar used to cleanse the space. You recall reading that vinegar baths were a popular, if futile, attempt to kill the plague's invisible agents. Historians still argue whether such methods helped slow the spread or just gave false hope. Inside, the moans and coughs form a macabre symphony. Patients lie crammed together on straw-stuffed mattresses, their bodies ravaged by fever and swollen buboes. You move from one to another, checking for signs of life and making notes on who might survive the night. In one corner, a young woman clutches a tattered doll, whispering prayers between fits of shivering. Her eyes meet yours briefly, full of terror and something else. Hope, maybe. You nod gently, wishing you had the power to ease her suffering beyond your humble tools. A frail old man shares a peculiar story about the plague's breath, a supposed poison exhaled by the infected that could kill from a distance. It's one of many fringe beliefs floating through the panic, a reminder of how desperate people become to make sense of chaos. You gently prod a swollen lymph node on a man's neck, wincing as he flinches. Your treatment is limited, lancing the buboes to drain them, applying herbal poultices, and trying to keep patients hydrated. It's primitive at best. Between patients, you catch snippets of conversation, a debate over whether the plague was God's punishment or a curse unleashed by witches. Some blame foreigners, others whisper about secret societies. The debates spill into your own mind. Historians still argue whether the bubonic plague's spread was accelerated by trade routes or environmental factors. But for you, those discussions offer little comfort. Outside, the tent's canvas flaps in a cold breeze, and you spot a rat darting near a pile of discarded bandages. It pauses, black eyes glinting, before disappearing into the shadows. Rats have become infamous villains in this grim saga, but their role remains controversial among scholars. Later, as you wash your hands in a basin of vinegar, you notice your reflection distorted in the water. The man staring back is tired, haunted, and changed irrevocably by the plague's relentless march. You wonder how many more faces you'll see twisted by fever before this nightmare ends. A fellow plague doctor, younger and braver than you feel, shares a grim joke. If death comes for me, I hope it's quick. I'm tired of dressing like a bird and smelling like a swamp. You laugh, the sound brittle but genuine. Night falls, and you collapse onto a cot, dreams invaded by visions of the dead and the living entwined in a dance as old as time itself. The morning light filters weakly through the cracks in your quarters. You wake, muscles stiff and soul heavy, yet the city's pulse calls you back out. Your first visit today is to the docks, where the plague's reach is especially cruel. Ships from distant lands, their sails tattered and paint peeling, creak as they wait to unload goods, and sometimes bodies. The salty air mingles with the stench of death, a bitter reminder of how interconnected the world is even in despair. You walk the docks, boots splashing through puddles, eyes scanning for signs of infection. Merchants and sailors whisper rumors of cursed voyages and ill omens, their voices low and fearful. You pass a man who claims to have survived the plague by wearing garlic cloves tied around his neck, an old superstition revived in desperation. Historians still argue whether such folk remedies had any effect or simply soothed anxious minds. Nearby, a port priest sprinkles holy water on crates, muttering prayers to ward off evil spirits. The line between faith and fear blurs here, and you wonder if belief is stronger medicine than herbs. Your next stop is a quarantine house, a bleak stone building where the infected are sealed away, left to their fate. The door creaks as you enter, and the smell of sickness nearly knocks you back. Inside, patients lie on straw pallets, some too weak to speak, others delirious with fever. You check each in turn, your touch careful but resigned. One man, eyes wild, raves about blackbirds that come to steal his soul. You smile beneath your mask. There's irony in that, given your own bird-like appearance. The plague twists minds as much as bodies. You apply poultices, clip nails, and do what little you can. The boundaries between doctor and mourner blur, each visit a somber ritual. Outside, a crowd gathers to watch your departure, faces pale and eyes wide. Some throw stones, others plead for help. You have neither time nor power for either. Walking away, you ponder the strange role you play, a figure both feared and necessary, a walking paradox in a world gone mad. At a nearby apothecary, you notice a new concoction on the shelves, a plague water made from a bizarre mix of mercury, camphor, and rose petals. The apothecary swears it's a cure, but you know better. You remember an old text that described mercury as both poison and remedy, a deadly dance mirrored in your own work. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of medieval medicines, but one thing's clear: desperation drives innovation, however misguided. The sun dips low as you return home, shadows stretching long across the cobblestones. You rest briefly before the evening calls you out again, a relentless tide of suffering and small victories. You pause at a street corner, watching a group of children play a cruel game of plague doctor, donning makeshift masks and laughing nervously. You almost join in, but the weight of your reality holds you back. Instead, you tuck your mask tighter and continue walking. Another day survived, but many more ahead. The chill in the air bites sharper today, but you barely notice. Your focus narrows to the task at hand, the grim routine of tracking symptoms, tending wounds, and recording names that fade too quickly from memory. Your path takes you to the town square, where a wooden scaffold stands, half-built, intended for public executions or perhaps mass burials. The air is heavy with dread and an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional cough or the distant ringing of a bell. You recall that the plague was often seen as divine punishment, a scourge unleashed to cleanse sins. But historians still argue whether fear of God or fear of disease drove the greater terror. Around the square, you see makeshift memorials, crosses, flowers, scraps of cloth tied to iron fences, tokens of grief in a world suddenly too fragile. You stop to speak with a grieving widow clutching a faded handkerchief. Her eyes, rimmed red from crying, meet yours briefly. No words pass, but a shared understanding lingers in the cold air. Nearby, a group of scholars debate how the plague might reshape society. Some say it will lead to greater compassion. Others fear lawlessness and despair. Their voices carry over the square, blending with the whispers of the wind. You remember the curious detail that some medieval towns tried to isolate the sick in lazarettos, early quarantine houses, precursors to modern isolation wards. It's one of the few strategies that helped slow the plague's relentless march. A ragged child approaches, holding out a small bundle of wildflowers. You accept, touched by the innocence that still dares to bloom amidst ruin. Later, you visit a grave digger's camp, where weary men toss shovels into dirt mounds that grow taller each day. The work is brutal and thankless, a constant reminder of mortality's grim tally. One gravedigger jokes that the plague doctor's mask is the only fashion statement that never goes out of style. You smile beneath the beak, appreciating the grim humor that shields against despair. You wonder how many more will fall before this chapter closes, and whether the world beyond will remember those who walk these streets cloaked in fear and duty. As night descends, you light a candle and write in your journal, a rare moment of quiet reflection. Your hand trembles slightly as you note the names and stories that must not be forgotten. Outside, the city sleeps uneasily, shadows dancing against stone walls, waiting for the next dawn. The air is thick with an almost tangible exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones and lingers long after the sun has set. Tonight, you wander the empty streets, the usual bustle replaced by an eerie silence. You're both haunted and hollowed out by the endless cycle of sickness and death. You pause by a fountain, its once sparkling waters now murky and still, reflecting the flickering torchlight. The statue at its center, a knight in armor, seems to watch over the city with a quiet stoicism. You can't help but draw a parallel to yourself, the plague doctor, armored in layers of cloth and leather, masked and mysterious, standing guard against an unseen enemy. Despite all the horrors, there are moments of strange beauty. The scent of damp earth after rain, the soft coo of pigeons settling for the night, the gentle rustle of leaves in the cold wind. These small details keep you tethered to the world of the living. You think back to the curious detail that plague doctors sometimes used canes, not just to examine patients without touching them, but to clear paths through crowds, or even to discipline unruly family members desperate to see their loved ones. A stark reminder that fear often breeds desperation, sometimes violent. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were effective healers or just grim symbols of death. To you, they were a little of both. Tragic figures, walking a fine line between hope and despair. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, you find a quiet spot beneath a gnarled tree. You sit, letting the weight of the day fall away. The city's distant sounds hum softly in your ears, a lullaby of survival. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, the scent of herbs in your mask mingling with the cool night air. For a moment, you are neither plague doctor nor victim, just a soul seeking peace in a world turned upside down. In the quiet darkness, you whisper a wish for the future, that humanity might learn, remember, and grow stronger from this terrible time. And maybe, just maybe, that you will survive to see the dawn. The night winds down gently now. Let your thoughts soften as the plague doctor's heavy steps fade into silence. Imagine the streets emptying, the city breathing slowly in the dark. Let the quiet moments remind you that even in the darkest times, small sparks of hope flicker, waiting to grow. Your journey through fear and duty draws to a close, but the story lingers like a whispered secret, teaching resilience in the face of despair. Rest easy, knowing that history remembers both the suffering and the strength of those who lived through it. Tomorrow holds new light, and so do you. End of script. Sweet dreams.